Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And it's becoming more and more clear that YouTube is eating television's lunch.
We've been saying it.
We've been saying it. This explains why Hollywood is trying so hard to push into YouTube. And if they can't push into YouTube, then they try to discredit YouTube.
They try to buy it.
Or they try to buy it out. We're seeing all kinds of interest from Hollywood in YouTube, which used to be amateur hour, right? Mm-hmm. And now we have some numbers that said that, YouTube viewership on television is blowing up, that people are watching YouTube instead of TV.
This is information we could have told you a while ago. Like, our kids have been watching YouTube as their television for years.
Oh my God, going back to like Annoying Orange, I used to watch it. Yeah.
More than they would watch TV.
So we're going to talk about that, why Hollywood is freaking out a little bit, I think, because all the ad dollars are going to YouTube. Now, this all ties into, the adpocalypse and all this other stuff that was going on that seemed like Hollywood and the media were trying to discredit YouTube.
Now they're just trying to buy their way in.
Now they're trying to buy their way in. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 201,000 subs.
Woo, almost 202,000.
This is coming from The Information. This is an industry website we've talked about before. We actually do keep up with The Information because they tend to break news before a lot of the mainstream media outlets do. And they had this interesting article today talking about viewership on YouTube and how more and more people are watching YouTube on television, effectively replacing broadcast television.
Right, and like I said, we've been telling you guys this, and they kept trying to argue, oh, it was on phones or devices. I knew people were using it on TV. They've had YouTube available on sticks and on TVs for a while now.
Yeah, they said that 40% of ads that air on YouTube in the US are now watched on television sets. So this is different because, up until recently, I mean, we had a TV that had the YouTube app like 10 years ago. But up until recently, most people were watching YouTube on their desktops, laptops, mobile devices. And now they're basically saying that people are just watching YouTube as television. Well,
that could be also because there are more and more TVs out there. People are replacing their televisions when they got stimulus checks or stimmy money or whatever. They went out and replaced their TVs with newer TVs, and a lot of newer TVs have, these apps on them. Also, if you use like some of the other sticks like Apple sticks and, Roku and all that, they all have YouTube channels on there as well. So it could be partly that more people are using just these kind of TVs and services. But if they have it, they're going to use it. And our kids, we've been since, oh my gosh, at least several years. That has been their number one source of entertainment, has been YouTube.
I would say going back to like 2009, 2010.
At least.
Yeah.
YouTube has been where they had a choice over anything else.
All right. So they said the change, and it's up 12% just from 2 years ago. And this happened during the pandemic, probably because a lot of shows, there really wasn't much on.
A lot of things were paused too because of the shutdowns.
The change suggests that the viewing habits of YouTube's audience, especially during the pandemic when people have been stuck in their home, are beginning to more closely resemble those of audiences for other streaming services. Netflix has said that over 70% of its audience watches the service on TV. Now, this is big for YouTube because YouTube was never really positioned as a Netflix competitor. It was never really positioned as television.
Yeah, but what I'm worried about is now that it's positioned as that, are they going to try to be another one of those other things? The reason YouTube does so well is because it's not those things.
Yeah.
But what I'm concerned about is Netflix is going to try to become those things because Hollywood is pushing for them to become those things so they can take over. So what I'm wondering now is, before, YouTube was the alternative to like Netflix and those kinds of things. So I have to wonder now, are they going to try to become like Netflix and those kinds of things? And if so, is it going to be Hollywood going to come in here, push in, and try to take it over? And the reason YouTube does so well is because it's not Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah, and we're seeing that already. We're seeing more and more Hollywood celebrities try to push into YouTube. They're starting to realize, like, oh, crap. Our cozy little lockdown system, it's never going to be that way again. People are going to YouTube, but they're going to YouTube because they want to go to YouTube for the views. They want to hear everyday people, watch everyday people doing crazy shit or talking about crazy shit. They can't see this on Netflix or Hulu or any of the Hollywood services.
Well, even with the news, they were trying to shut down that if it wasn't an approved news network, they weren't going to promote certain channels like ours, probably, that, cover news, because they only want one voice to be heard, or one version of things to be heard. And that's a problem. So where it's a great, big, awesome thing that YouTube is doing so well and people are watching it through TV shows, it's also a possible entryway for Hollywood to shit all over it, take it over, make it another branch of themselves. They've been trying. Heck, they even were bringing people in from like Twitch, like they had Ninja on, Masked Singer, a couple of seasons ago, trying to get into that crowd and get them on there too.
I remember when PewDiePie was up for an award. I can't remember what awards, if it was Emmys or something. It was some mainstream award show, and they were making fun of him. They're like, "Who the hell is this?"
He's like, he's probably more famous than you are.
Yeah, it was like whoever the announcers were making fun of him, and they're like, "Who's this schmuck?" There's a bunch of famous people and this guy. And what we're finding out though is we get Hollywood types come to YouTube, and a lot of them, they can't hack it. They come to YouTube, and they don't do very well.
They might get an initial audience that's a big one because they're banking on their name, or their PR people, do things to make sure that they're promoted to the top. But that doesn't mean that they're going to stick. Or people are, they want alternatives to Hollywood. They don't want to see more Hollywood.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. So anyway, what were you going to talk about?
Anyway, this analyst at MoffettNathanson predicted that ad spending on streaming services other than YouTube will quadruple, but they said YouTube could spoil that. So what's going on now? Like HBO Max, we're seeing they're trying to do an ad-supported version. Peacock is doing an ad-supported version. They're throwing ads in there because the subscriber money is not enough.
Even if you pay, that's what pisses me off. Even if you pay the subscription to not have to have ads, a lot of these services are still putting ads in it anyway.
Yeah.
On new things like Hulu, you're ad-free. On old stuff, like they find ways around it to still keep taking ad money. So you have to see the ads anyway.
So I love this. So they had an adpocalypse on YouTube, but they're saying last year YouTube's ad revenue doubled compared to what it was in 2017.
And
when
YouTube's
they had,
pleading poverty.
And they're pleading poverty. They said in the first quarter of this year it rose by 48.7% to $6 billion from the year earlier period. I think what's going on now, we saw, and we're not going to talk specific numbers, but just on our end, we saw a huge dip in advertising revenue last year when the pandemic began. And that was across the board. That was on YouTube, that was on our blogs. Everything was down because people were afraid to spend money. So I think the deck has been reshuffled because it seems like they're putting more into video advertising.
Well, where you're going to advertise people go, where people are going to see it. And, and that's why we get sponsorships on our videos and things like that, because they're going to go where people are actually going to see the advertising.
And the thing is another wrench into this is YouTube has YouTube TV, which is kind of what Hulu does, where, you can watch broadcast television through YouTube. And they've got the backing of Google. And this is why I think we're seeing all kinds of weirdness with how they're dealing with Roku and all this other stuff, because they actually want to lock down eyeballs. And right now, I don't think any of these streaming services, say for Netflix and maybe Disney, can hold a candle to YouTube.
And they're going to try to argue it, because here they talk about, well, advertiser said, an agency said that was ridiculous because only 10% of their budget goes to YouTube for TV advertising. And I'm like, does it though? Because YouTube's owned by Google, and if you're giving Google ads, it might be inadvertently going around to YouTube that way too.
That is true. Because yes, it's. I mean, they try to tell you that exactly where your views are going, but that's not always the case. But yeah, they're basically telling people, hey, move a huge part of your advertising budget to YouTube. So what they're doing is they're moving it away from broadcast television. They're moving it away from these streaming services, and they're putting it into YouTube's bucket. Hollywood, of course, is freaking the hell out because they need the ad revenue.
I'm sorry, I have to laugh about this though, about the ad agency. Only about 10% of their clients spend on TV advertising. Well, that's okay, because about half the percentage of their budget goes into their pockets of the agency right off the top. So it might have been more if they had pocketed half the money.
Well, here they go. And we're going to talk about this real quick while we're mentioning Hulu, because Disney's been, I got to tell you, we've noticed we've been using Hulu as like our primary TV for a couple of years now. They keep jacking the prices up. There are so many damn ads on Hulu.
It is. It's getting worse and worse. And it used to be a lot of the more Disney ads, and you still get those thrown in all the time. But yeah, the other day, there were like 5 ads in a row or something.
Yeah, it's basically.
And we're supposed to have the ad free, aren't we?
Yeah, we actually do have the ad free. But we're watching like first run. So it's ad-free asterisks because it's whatever the first run shows are. A lot of times they put ads in there. It's just the old stuff. If you're watching like Leave It to Beaver or something, you're not going to get ads. But if you're watching something that was just on last night, a lot of times, or you're watching it live, which I think we might have been watching it live or something, but they throw the ads in.
No, it wasn't
there.
live, but they throw a lot of ads in.
Yeah, it was within 24 hours, I think, of it dropping, though. But yeah, Disney ad sales just went through the roof. And it's because they're Hulu is aggressively trying to get ad dollars. We keep getting emails. They're trying to get us to advertise on Hulu. I'm like, what?
Oh, they do. It's weird.
We should.
We've seen some local people on there. We should. That burns. We could.
That'd be funny. Clownfish TV advertising on Hulu.
If you could target a certain area, you should target the West Coast because it would piss people off.
Oh
anyway.
my god. Yeah. So this is gonna be really interesting. This explains everything. This explains why Hollywood is freaking out because they're looking at these numbers. They have access to these numbers before websites like this have access to these numbers. So probably going back a year or two, even when the first adpocalypse started, they're probably like, oh shit, this YouTube thing is really it's really eating into our bottom line. What can we do? Well, let's discredit YouTubers. Let's smear them. Didn't work. Let's trigger an adpocalypse. That didn't work very well because YouTube ad revenue doubled.
Here's a wild idea, Hollywood. Maybe, just maybe, if you make shows people actually want to watch, if you make new things, or if you're going to repurpose an old thing, you stick close to what the core of the property was, and you stop trying to please Twitter instead of pleasing the actual audience at large. You might do better than YouTube. Yeah. But you won't do that.
Well, the nice thing about YouTube too is everything is in one place. This is what was nice about Netflix is everything was in one place, and now there's like 50 different streaming services.
There's too many. And like I said, and for years. And we saw it on those charts we saw it too. There was charts about what kids are watching.
Yeah.
And YouTube was at the top and it keeps moving up and up and up. And I'll mention it again, since my kids were little, they have preferred YouTube over anything else for, years. And now it's showing up on charts where Disney and Nickelodeon and stuff are dropping down the list and YouTube's coming up. That one kids network, what is it they have on?
Cocomelon.
Yes.
They have toys in Walmart.
And it's a YouTube. There's a lot of YouTubers are doing books and toy lines. How many toy lines we see of YouTubers that are out there? Yeah. That's where the money is, and companies know it. But the reason that they're successful, and what's pissing Hollywood off, is because they're not Hollywood.
Yeah. So if they ruin that, what's going to happen is people are just going to go someplace else.
Yeah. So YouTube, don't change it, because if you do, you're just going to end up, Yeah.
You're going to end up like MySpace.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for all these Hollywood studios to try to get together and buy YouTube. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. I don't think you have enough money. All right, we're going to wrap this one up.
Yep.
All right, so please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.
Bye.